Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I've got a build guide that I'm putting together for a 3.8 Blight League ready Slayer Cyclone character. Now, I've got some gameplay footage here. Because 3.8 hasn't gone live yet and I haven't built this character, I'm playing the closest character that I've got to them on the live servers, and this is a Berserker Cycloner. Whilst the Berserker and the Slayer have their differences, I would suggest that the Slayer is the stronger of the two choices for the 3.8 environment. And for that matter, the Cyclone Berserker was actually not as strong as Cyclone Slayer during the 3.7 expansion either. Now, I'm just going to rush through this delve. This is approximately a 300 depth in the 3.7 era, which is going to be approximately a 240 depth. The monsters here are moderately tougher than monsters that you would find in a tier 16 map. However, the map mods are not particularly scary. Should give you a sense as to how you can knock down monsters pretty quickly. Now, I'll just do this Azurite encounter here, which is a reasonably dull and boring encounter, but will get the job done. There's a number of utility spots available for, in this build. There's a core of skills that you will need to use, and then there's a number of spots that you can, flex slots where you can follow your own variants from the guide. And people will always modify the way that characters play. Once you understand the core of a build, I always recommend that you make the changes necessary to make the build your own. So hopefully that gives a bit of a sense as to what the gameplay looks like. And at this point, I'm going to log out of the game client and return to some theory crafting. So, the Slayer Ascendancy nodes are listed here. However, a number of them are being slightly nerfed. The first nerf that is happening that is significant, there is the Impact node. Not the Impact node, the Overwhelm node. The base critical strike for chance for attacks with weapons is being nerfed to 7.5%. It will still be an excellent choice, and I'll come back to later whether you should take it or not. Bane of Legends, which is one of the most popular nodes at the moment, is also being nerfed, and this is a more significant nerf. These two 20% at the start gain 20% increased movement speed for 20 seconds and gain 20% increased attack speed for 20 seconds upon killing certain monsters. They're being nerfed to 10%. Bane of Legends is still a compelling choice, but where in the 3.7 meta it was a mandatory choice, it is now going to be a choice. You will have the option to either take it or take something else instead. So, why are we considering Cyclone? Firstly, it's a proven build. It's one that people know works. Secondly, because it's a two-handed weapon build that I'm suggesting here, there's a couple of good benefits for that. Firstly, two-handed weapons give you the flexibility to use Calm's Heart, which is very powerful defensive armor that grants 500 base life. This is an option that you can take up later in your character's career. You won't be able to afford a Calm's Heart until you've run perhaps 200 or 300 endgame maps. Now, in 3.7, the two-handed Cyclone was generally eclipsed by dual-wield Cyclone. However, some of the things that made dual-wield so powerful were the range mechanics on Cyclone, which have been nerfed. Consequentially, I think that two-handed builds have possibly caught up at this point. Now, we're going to be going with the Slayer Ascendancy because it provides an excellent balance of offense and defense. It's not as fast as a Berserker, it's not as tanky and durable as a Juggernaut, but it's probably better balanced than the Champion or the Gladiator. However, you can certainly adapt the build a bit to make it fit any of those, or you could adapt it a lot to make it fit other Ascendancies as well. We're going to go with Critical Strikes, Impale, and Pure Physical Damage. This simply does more damage than the alternatives, and also functions better at a lower gear level than some of the alternatives like Elemental Damage Scaling. Elemental Damage Scaling can be really good when you've got amazing gear, but it's pretty terrible at low gear levels. Critical Strikes play to the strengths of the Slayer well, as does Impale. Now, this build will be a powerful starter, and you can use any old melee skill. Sunder is popular up to level 28, and then you can level as Cyclone from there. The only thing I suggest is that you hold off on attaching Brutality support until the time is right. And you won't, in terms of when the time is right, it'll probably be when you're starting to get into maps. Okay, so in terms of your Ascendancy choice, as I said, we're going to go the Slayer. Impact and Bane of Legends have taken modest nerfs, but still remain strong. Headsman is a mandatory node to take. It was the most taken node on Slayers in 3.7 for a very good reason, and it gives you 20% more damage against unique enemies, 10% more damage if you've killed recently, by the way those stack, and complete immunity to reflected physical damage. We're only dealing physical damage on this build, so therefore we're pretty damn happy with that setup. That's just too good not to take, so we're going to take it. Then you're going to pick any 3 of the following 5. Impact, Bane of Legends, Overwhelm, Endless Hunger, or Brutal Fervor. And once you pick those 3, I'm not going to argue for any combination of the 3 of them. I feel all of the options that are available are compelling choices and have their own strengths and weaknesses. You'll be fine. You'll be well set up. Should you decide to go with Endless Hunger, you'll be rewarded with the Endless Hunger and the Brutal Fervor node line. You'll be rewarded with considerable defense through Life Leech, which is essentially like having 20% life regen all the time, and plenty of other benefits to go with it. So that's a pretty solid choice, but you can also just go with the other choices. So just once more, any 3 of Impact, Bane of Legends, Overwhelm, Endless Hunger, Brutal Fervor. If you don't choose to take Overwhelm, then consider Flesh Rippers as your weapons. They will be excellent because although they do a little bit less damage than Varlaxes and some of the other weapons available, they have increased base critical strike. In terms of mana reservations, we will be using Pride. Pride enormously amps up the amount of physical damage that you do to enemies. Next, we will be using Flesh and Stone, and this will be linked to blind support. Flesh and Stone has taken a minor nerf in 3.8, but it is still great, and this combination with blind support is still solid. Finally, for mana reservations, we want to experiment with precision. At the moment, there's going to be some changes to the various ways that you can reduce the mana cost of Cyclone. They're not going to be as strong as they were in 3.7, and as a result, I don't know yet how far you're going to want to level up your Precision Gem. What I suggest you do is you start out by leveling your Precision Gem, and if you go too far, if you find that you end up having real mana issues, then either buy a new Precision Gem that's level 1, or de-level your Precision by offering it to a vendor with an Orb of Scouring. If you offer a skill gem to a vendor with an Orb of Scouring, they will return that gem to you -1 level. If you offer it to them with an Orb of Regret, they'll return it to you, but downgraded to all the way to level 1. But of course, it may just be cheaper to purchase a new copy of the Precision Gem and level it as far as you need to. So what are your core links that you're going to use on this build? Your core links are Cyclone, linked to Impale, linked to Brutality, linked to Infused Channeling, linked to Pulverize, and linked to Fortify. However, you're not going to be able to use all of those at first, and eventually you may actually be able to find room for one more link with various pseudo 7-link options, at which point you'll be linking melee physical damage. So Cyclone is obviously the core skill. Impale is just one of the best ways to amp up physical damage on weapons. You're also going to be taking passive nodes on the tree that make Impale even better, and Impale simply does more than any other support gem available. Brutality causes you to be unable to deal non-physical damage from that skill. However, it tremendously increases the amount of physical damage that you do. Multiplier on it is so high that the drawback is easily worked around. Next, we have Infused Channeling, which is just a skill that you have to feel how good it is in practice to see why you're using it. Infused Channeling gives your channeled skills, and Cyclone's a channeled skill, bonuses where they do more damage of types that match their skill gems. Cyclone is a physical skill gem because it adds physical damage to attacks, and as a result, Infused Channeling causes you to deal more physical damage, and this then causes you to also take less physical damage when you hit. It's an excellent support gem. Next, we're going to be taking Pulverize, which has been reworked in 3.8. It now has a better damage profile, but less area. It's an excellent gem, and I suggest that you definitely still use it despite the nerfs. Finally, Fortify support has been changed so that not only does it make you take less damage, but it also gives 34% more damage at gem level 20. again, it's just too strong not to use. Melee physical damage being the final link that we'll use when we're able to move Fortify, so that instead of Fortify being a gem slot, your idea is to replace Fortify support with a single mod on a weapon. We'll come back to that later. There's a number of mandatory utility gems you'll be using. First up, you'll be using Blood Rage. Blood Rage will be one of your main ways that you will be recovering life. Blood Rage is a buff that you cast that has a set duration, starts at about 7 seconds and gets to be longer as you level it up. It causes you to steadily lose life, which is unfortunate, but we'll manage with that. And it causes you to attack faster and to sometimes gain frenzy charges when you kill an enemy. But the other thing it does is it causes you to gain a lot of physical attack damage life leech. All of the damage you're dealing is physical attack damage, so it is a truly excellent setup. You'll also need to use some sort of guard skill. These are Immortal Call, Molten Shell, and Steel Skin. I'm not going to make a blanket recommendation here. I personally favour Molten Shell. However, if you elect to use Acrobatics and Phase Acrobatics, which is something that's not in the core build, but that is an option that you can take, then in that case I suggest you drop Molten Shell and replace it with Steel Skin. These are instant cast skills that you can either cast yourself or that you can attach to cast when damage taken, and that provide you with considerable shielding against damage taken. For example, if you have a Steel Skin level 20 and you cast it, it gives you a shield that absorbs the next 2,209 damage that comes at you. It actually only absorbs 70% of the incoming damage, so you do need to have a little bit of life left still, but it will provide you with it's like a preemptive health potion, as long as your life is not completely empty. I suggest that with these guard skills that you experiment with cast when damage taken, you experiment with manually casting them. On my Berserker, I'm manually casting Steel Skin at the moment, but I would probably be using Molten Shell. I'd have to verify it. If I was going to continue playing the character, I'd have to do the maths. I had thought that Molten Shell was weaker than it was, so therefore I chose Steel Skin. Now, those are the mandatory utility gems, so Blood Rage and 1 Guard. The other utility gems you can consider, and I'll leave this choice entirely up to you, maybe you decide you want a Golem. There's several options you can pick here, and all of them have their own unique benefits and drawbacks. I don't feel any of them are mandatory. And also, Golems do have drawbacks sometimes. In maps where projectiles chain, Golems are terrible. And also, Golems can sometimes draw aggro that you are not expecting and get you in trouble. Some bosses also have telegraphed attacks where you can't tell if they're targeting you or your Golem, and that can be a real problem. Ancestral Warchief Totem is a skill that is very useful. This is something that it's a totem that you place on the ground. It makes melee attacks with a copy of your weapon, and it also causes you to attack faster. It's very good on bosses. You cast it, and then suddenly, as long as it doesn't die, you're going to attack faster for the entire duration of the skill. You may wish to use some powerful Vaal skill. This can be Vaal Molten Shell. We've already mentioned Molten Shell as an option in the guard skills. It can be... I've been quite partial to a 4-link Vaal Ground Slam, which damages and stuns everything around you. And you can experiment with other choices. I think default to Vaal Molten Shell, if you haven't made up your mind. Default to Vaal Molten Shell, but be willing to try other things. You also need a move skill, and I'm very partial here to going a 4-link Leap Slam attached to faster attacks, attached to Endurance Charge on melee stun, and attached to Fortify. This is a really strong setup in that it will enable you to move around the map very fast, and every time you hit an enemy that's at full life, Leap Slam will stun them, and Endurance Charge on melee stun will trigger, causing you to remain at full Endurance Charges all the time. There's other options you can use as well: Rallying Cry, Abyssal Cry, lots of things that you can experiment with. The core of the build is Cyclone, Impale, Brutality, Infused Channeling, Pulverize, Fortify, and when you can get it, melee physical support. But these utility slots are entirely up to you. In terms of the Pantheon, I've got no real suggestions here because you don't want to just set and forget a Pantheon. Change it as appropriate, but default to using the Brine King for resilience against being frozen. However, as a Cyclone character, you are immune to stun and whilst actively cycloning, and so that's something that will also be may also influence your decisions with Pantheon mods. Just try a few of them out and see what works for you. For gearing priorities, I've mentioned that you can use Calm's Heart. Now, Calm's Heart is not something you can get very early in a league easily. You probably won't be able to afford it until you've run 200 maps or so. In Legion, I ended up purchasing one from another player that came corrupted with a very powerful Val implicit on it, and that cost me 5.5 Exalted Orbs. Obviously, this is not going to be an option on day one of a league, so while you're getting started, what I want to suggest you do is just get Life and Resist in your chest slot to begin with. Then look to upgrade to better Life, Resist, and a 5-link, and then eventually look to upgrade to either Calm's Heart or a very powerful Elder chest, ideally an Elder Astral Plate, but those are expensive, that has powerful mods that are being crafted from the use of a serrated fossil. Calm's Heart is the other very good option, and that decision will be up to you depending on the number of gem slots that you want and the like. In terms of other slots, there are no mandatory unique items for this build, and you can sort out your Life and Resist first. So when you're getting the character started, get the Life and Resist sorted first, and then fill in the rest later. The first item you really want to prioritize is getting a 5-link an Elder two-handed weapon and roll supported by Fortify on it. This can be level 16, and I'll show you what this mod looks like. It's POED